What's going on, YouTube? Big Dawg Brett. I guess it's that time again. College football national championship game. Guess who ain't gonna be there? Well, it looks like it's gonna be LSU versus Clemson tonight at 8. And I have been putting a lot of thought into this. And I have no idea exactly how to put this. Both sides of the coin. And I'll give you my prediction here at the end. Anybody with a reasonable outlook on football could look at this game and go, this should be a heck of a game. And I'm going to go through why. So I'm going to argue both sides of the ball, both teams, and then I'm going to let you know who I think it's going to be. So let's start out with Clemson. Clemson, I mean, good night. What are they, like 25-0 or something? They've won like their last 25 games. I mean, hanging 40, 50 points on everybody they play. They had a couple of bad games here and there. But for the most part, I mean, just a really sound team. Trevor Lawrence could arguably be the Heisman Trophy winner coming into the season. He was Heisman hopeful. ETN, an amazing running back. More NFL talented wide receivers than you can swing a dead cat and hit. I mean, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting at least 4 NFL wide receivers on that team. I mean, it's impossible. The downside of Clemson, their schedule. You look at their schedule and go, wow, you guys really haven't played anybody. But that's an argument that you got to say, well, they didn't really play anybody last year. They didn't have any problem winning the national championship then. I do think Clemson has taken a minor step back. Does that mean it's enough to cost them a national championship? Hard to say, but it certainly doesn't appear so. I mean, they've blown out pretty much everybody they've played. They had a bad game against North Carolina, but they won that game. Some would say they should have beat South Carolina by more points. Yeah, but they held them to 3. Some people might even say that they didn't have that great of a game against Texas A&M. That was the second game of the season. I mean, and the only other bad game that you could say they played was against Ohio State, which was a number 2 team in the country. And that was a 29-23 victory for them. And it was Clemson's defense is what saved them in that game. They got enough pressure on Justin Fields that threw an interception, and it cost them the game. If they would have went down there and got a touchdown, that would have put Ohio State up 30-29. Super, super close game. Now, let's look at LSU. LSU has pretty much done the same thing. They had a bad game. You could say they had a bad game against Auburn, 23-20, but they won that game. Some could say maybe they had a bad game against Mississippi State. They could have scored more points against Mississippi State. Everybody else is 45 to 65 points. And I mean, and then they played Georgia. Supposed to have one of the best defenses in the country. I think nobody had scored more than 17 points on Georgia in regular game time all season. And then LSU comes out and hangs 37 on Georgia like it was no big deal. I do think Georgia had a better defense than Ohio State did. And And then they go out and they hang 63 points on Oklahoma. Oklahoma supposedly has one of the better offenses in the country, and they can only produce 28 points. There's only been one game all season where LSU has scored less than 36 points. And that was against Mississippi State. That was at Auburn. Everything else was 36 or higher. Clemson had 1, 2, 3 games where they scored less than 30. So you could realistically argue that their offense isn't quite as good. Now, I know, got a lot of Clemson fans, got some LSU fans. I'm not here to play favorites. But if I look at the schedules, I've got to say, okay, who's got the tougher schedule? Who's more battle-tested? Well, LSU beat Texas, beat Florida, beat Auburn, beat Alabama, beat Georgia, and beat Oklahoma. That's no easy feat. I mean, if you look at their schedule, almost I would say 95% of the teams in the country would take at least 3 losses right here. Between Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Auburn, I mean, you're going to take at least 3 or 4 losses there. Then turn around and play Oklahoma. That's tough. Watching Joe Burrow this year, he's been absolutely incredible. It's just been insane. Watching Trevor Lawrence make some of the passes he makes, it's just been insane. This is going to be a tough game. This is going to be a game where mistakes are going to absolutely be game changers. If you look at rushing yards, you can't really say that Edwards-Helaire is some phenom going to rush for 100 yards every game. He ran for 45 against Georgia Southern, 50 against Northwestern State, 53 against Mississippi State, 57 against Georgia. That's 4 games right there where, 50, 60 yards. Then he had 87 against A&M and 87 against Texas. That's 2 more games under 100. Utah State, he only had 72. That's another game under 100. So he's only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games this season where he's rushed for over 100 yards. What does that tell you? That tells you that Joe Burrow doesn't need to have a phenomenal running back in his backfield for him to be productive. There's only been 2 games all season where he hasn't had at least 100 yards on one guy. Jefferson had 1 game where he was he had 2 games where he was under 100. It was 87 and 89. We had a game that was 115, a game 155, a game 124, a game 163. And then he had Chase at 197, 144, 227, 140, and 123, and another game at 127 and another game at 229. That's 1 receiver. To put that in perspective for you guys, he's got games where 1 receiver had more receiving yards than in some games that Jake Fromm had to everybody in the whole game. Man. And then against Oklahoma, he had 227 yards, which was just 2 yards short of their season high. I really think that Joe Burrows is coming along. I mean, you look at his passing yards. First game right at 300. Second game almost 500. Third game almost 400. Fourth game right at 400. Next game 350, then 300, then 325, then 325, then 400, then 500, then 325, then 350, then 350, and then 500. This guy can ball. If you jump over here and you look at Lawrence, 160, 170, 270, 400, 100, 200, 170, 230, 275, 218, 275, 275, 300, 300. Pretty clear. Joe Burrows just seems to be a better throwing quarterback against greater competition. And I think LSU's got a better kicker. So after looking at everything, weighing everything out, I really think that LSU is a better team. But somehow Clemson keeps finding ways to win. I think that in this game, though, I think LSU is going to take the cake. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think that when it gets down to the end, I don't think Joe Burrows is going to be shook. I don't think he's going to be nervous. This guy plays with exceptional poise. He's capable of being a game manager, but he's a gunslinging, bullseye hitting football artiste. The guy can play. Because of that, I think they're going to find a way to win. So for me, picking LSU. Score 38-31. You guys have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in. God bless. Guess what? Go Dogs.